here's what I really want, what we want to get with the progressions to start with. There's too much to get the whole thing and then bring the whole thing of progressions into the transits right away. You want to get the main 30-year things. So we have this graphic, we've done it. This is the sun and its progressions across 90 years. And I've marked in the new moons and the full moons every 15 years. You know, so from new moon to new moon is 30-year cycles. Full moon to full moon is 30-year cycles, but 15 years in between. And the X is on the one where there's eclipses. So when I look at this, 1954, there was the new moon. And that just moved into Scorpio. That was when I was in grade, we moved to, and I was in the grade 1, and I had the grade 11 gym team. I was on the grade 11 gym team with this great Russian teacher, but he wasn't, I only had him for a year or so. But that was really a surge of things I could do that were above and beyond the normal, that built up confidence a lot, that weren't anything to do with family. That was a shift to Scorpio. But 69, it was the full moon. So this we were having the session for 67, 69, the progressed full moon was when I was sitting in the room too during the full moon. So it was before that. But since this is the full moon, the sun would be going through Scorpio, the moon would have been up in the 9th house of higher philosophy or higher learning, distant travels. But the sun was going over my Mars. For 2 years I was in India in that room. The sun was on my Mars. It was supposed to be the most assertive, aggressive. I was doing something. I was really actively pushing and doing something strongly with my soul on my energy, but everything out in the outside world was blocked. And this was all before I was into astrology or anything like that. I didn't know any of these things. We just following the energies, but really trying to solve the puzzle. Why am I blocked? What am I doing? And then, so I put myself in the room, and that was the challenge in itself. Each day to just get by, to keep chanting, keep meditating, keep a little discipline going to pass the time without any relevance to anyone else. So, but this, setting this graph up with the times, you want to interspace back and forth where things are to against the Saturn cycle. Okay, so to get this, just to get this information, we're going to be doing it exactly with the charts, not with all these extra charts, but I wanted to explain different ways you could get it. We have it in your chart. Just if you had your ephemeris and you put your progressed constant date down, we put in whenever the sun, we marked wherever the sun changed sign. We put a little blue line in. Then we did the moon. We put in whenever, we marked whenever the moon crossed an angle in the chart. And we marked in whenever it was the new moon, the dark line, and a gold for the full moon. So we marked in the new moons and full moons on the moon cycle on this graph. And by seeing them, here's 1967, 1969, there was the full moon right there, Taurus to Scorpio. And you can see that the sun was between 15 and 16 degrees Scorpio, and that was conjunct my Mars. So if you know your chart, it gives you the transiting positions. And then, so just working the sun and moon, this is the information I want to integrate against the background of the Saturn cycle to start to at least bring in the presence of the progressed sun. It's just Saturn's the key in the transit. The progressed sun is the key in the progressions, and the other planets will align around it. So once you got the progressed constant date, you got your calendar. For years before computers, every chart I had, I'd have a file. I had the chart form. I had the Saturn cycle, and I'd have the 3 months. I'd have this ephemeris printed out and have the 3 months of the ephemeris in their file, and I'd have it marked with the progressed constant date, and I'd marked on the main changes for a lifetime. So that's now with computers, you can just go in and you're doing progressions to progressions. This is a chart that's just all the progressions to progressions. I just did it for 8 years. And I generally do this with a client. I'm looking at 8 years to see, this is the themes in my progressions. They're not the ones that specifically are hitting me. The reason I do this, you see the 10 energy in the progressed chart, but here it says Uranus conjunct the midheaven. That's not conjuncting my midheaven, it's conjuncting the progressed midheaven. And they're somewhat relevant, but they're not as critical as the progressed to the natal. But it does give you the new moons and full moons, or the moon phases. So for the progressed to progressed, we use that for the moon phases to get the moon phases. There's the full moon, October 19th, 69, just as I'm leaving India. just short. I left India within a month that I was back here in North America. A little bit of a culture shock. So then we, in the computer program, will calculate the full moons. Just if you just did the moon, progressed moon, progressed moons, the sun, and look for conjunctions and oppositions, you get the new moons and full moons, and the dates they occur on. So that's the dates along that mark. You have your progressed sun going along. This is the date where it gives you the dates and the degrees, where you can mark the degree and put the date on the graph to get your progressed sun and the new moons and full moons. Then we did this, I showed you how to do this before, so it's in the best classes, but you can use the WinStar and go into it. This is done under searches, but if you're in the search engine, you can go under events and hit eclipses, and it'll give you the eclipses for the year you were born. And those are the eclipses. Some of it, like for me, the first 4 are all before I was born: January, May, June. I'm born in October, so it's only these last 2, November and December. These are the eclipses at 0 Sag 50 and 6 Gemini 03. That's where the moon was. So if I look back on this, there's the 0 Sag 50, there's the 1603. So it was 1884 and 99. I had the 2 eclipses. It wasn't in this time in the meditation room. But this is just what you can do. You get it's simple. In a few seconds, you can get the minute or 2. You got the progressed moon and which are eclipses, and you got it. So you can add that to your progressed sun's chart, and you got your schedule that you need. Okay, you could add the dates that the moon sign changes, the sun changes signs by progressions, but you can pretty well figure that out in your head in a second or 2. Okay, so this was, then I run off a chart. This is just done for the 8 years, or for 5 years. It took the progressed, this is all the progressed aspects, all the progressed planets to the natal chart. Just put all the, and then I marked in the ones that were, this was in October 67, when I'm coming for the reading, my progressed ascendant was squaring Uranus. So that was inwardly shaken up and disturbed. I didn't relate to what was going on around me. So I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't stay where I was. But I'm not sure what would happen to me if I went and got a chart done. That time I didn't have money, so it was just an internal process of waking up that I hadn't been living right and I had to change the way I was living. But then 68, it puts the Venus, while I was in that room, Venus conjuncted Venus, it retrograded back to its own place. The full moon came in, and there's the progressive sun going over Mars. So it just listed the main aspects that were happening that I went through in the room, or means nothing to anyone else, but they were the challenges I had to go through while I was living alone and trying to meditate. Okay, so now, and then you want to be able to take a look just to see where Mercury is, if it's going retrograde or not, to see more or less if there's a retrograde phase or not in the person's life and when it is, where you are in that stage of it. So have a glance at that. So in my chart, there's the Mercury. It just went up, and there's the dot where Mercury is right in 1967 in the fall. And it's just before it goes retrograde. You can see it's just before it turns around. So over the next few years, I'd go spend time in India, I'd come back, and then Mercury would go retrograde. Then it would back up for 22 years. Then it would go forward, come back to its own place, and go forward in my life. This is my progressed Mercury. My Mercury will always be 3rd, 4th, 5th, and maybe 6th house in my life. So for us, we did these star graphs, and they're so useful, but you may not do them for everybody. You know, like this is a little more time consuming. So I want to show you how we use them. Once you have done them, you've got it to refer to at any time. It's great. So for me, there's Mercury's going direct, and right here, October 71, it went retrograde. I just come back from India in 69, was living with a lady, and October 71, right at that stationary retrograde point, I think I must have proposed to get married. We got married by December 71, the beginning of the retrograde. And then it didn't last that long, it lasted a certain amount of time, but anyways, went there, and then it started going back. By October 91, it went direct. In October 90, I'm just showing just getting a sense of the progression. It's all there, so I can look at it. October 91, it went direct, and that's the end of my third marriage. So my whole 22 years of Mercury retrograde was my marriages. So I went through my life forward to be the sadhu or the saint, then I went back being a marriage for 22, then I went forward having to teach the astrology and reestablish my mystical and inner traditions. So I'm rethinking things. I went forward one way thinking, and my thinking wasn't that clear. I went back trying to think in context of relationships, which was my hang up before. And I did that, and it still didn't work out, but I learned. Now I'm thinking forward, had to start thinking forward, using experiences with relationships and not relationships, and had to think positively this time going forward. And I didn't get back to that starting point, to the retrograde point, until February 09. And in February 09, that my grandson was born, and I started my Waking Dream website. I started the first big website on astrology. So that was a significant turning point, and it's just gone forward since then. So okay, that's our progression. Now, in your ephemeris, in your Swiss ephemeris, in the ephemeris, the monthly ephemeris, you have your Mercury, and on the Mercury, we've marked in when it changes sign or when it crosses an angle. The IC, hit my IC in 1958. Okay, just as we were leaving from a small town to the big city. But then it went retrograde in 1971. There it starts, and the blue line puts it 22 years. Went direct in 91. Went direct. There it is. There. So I got the years. I can estimate the 5 years in between which one it is. I can see when Mercury changed signs, when it hit the IC again in 1980. And I got so just working with the ephemeris, I did this for years before there's computers. This is the best way to work on it. Actually, I did this, and then I would make some worksheets where I get this in more detail, and then we hand calculate. There's a lot of tedious work. I still would do it because for astrology, you always had to do some calculation to get some result. So that was part of the normal discipline. But I'm just showing you, just with the ephemeris, you can have the general idea of these things. But I suggest you photocopy. I met one man from an astrologer in Hong Kong, and he worked with progressions extensively. His ephemeris, he had marked in the ephemeris when everyone was born. Every page had lines from one chart or another. I'd never seen that so marked up ephemeris. It was getting so cluttered with information that it was hard to go in to look at it for fresh. But he had the charts, his regular clients, everybody put on, he had it working within it. That was probably, he didn't have access to a photocopy machine to do it separately. He just did it in the ephemeris. And he would burn out an ephemeris every few years, have to get a new ephemeris. But so that's why we did the progression. So we went at this with the progressions. You can do it this way and organize it, and you get the information. And really, on this one sheet, you can have all the other planets marked in. I did separate columns for each one, but to show you, but really you can have them all marked in on the same graph, so it's a useful access. Okay, and then we got to just take a look to see where Venus is in the process. And it's really looking across the lifetime. Does it go retrograde? Doesn't? Is what's happening? So my chart, my Venus went forward till 1957. Then it went retrograde. My brother was born. We had to move from the river and from my little Tom Sawyer paradise into an apartment, and then moved into the big city. Retrograde. It wasn't until 1999 that it went direct. And then it went forward, came back to these points, and went forward again. So it went back and forth over my IC, so did my Mercury. So my Venus and Mercury for most of my life has been in Scorpio in the third house. Judgmental, asking questions, research has been great for research. It drove me to find the value in those things, as opposed to finding values out in the world. But the astrology came in as my independent career, Uranus in the 10th, and carried me in my own crazy lifestyle to allow me to keep doing this research in depth. So again, we have are these put in backwards? Yes, they are. Okay. So